I made the decision to have a sip of water in the living room since I couldn't sleep. Midnight has arrived. Trying not to make any noise as I descended, I was shocked to see that the lights were on. My son, his wife, and my husband were whispering to each other. "Have you noticed that? How frantic she appeared in her attempt to win our approval. It's very pitiful." My kid said, "Yeah, that was a funny look on her face when she saw the leftovers in the trash." Even though the croquettes and fried chicken weren't all that good, I nearly started laughing when she asked if we liked them. They called me worthless, made fun of me, and ridiculed me. Though I realised that things had gone too far for that, I prayed it was simply a terrible dream. I was at my breaking point. I had been neglected non-stop since my son and his wife moved into the new house we constructed a few months ago. With sinister grins, all three of them would glance at me. I used to feel angry and sad, but now I've stopped feeling anything. Making the decision to leave the house didn't take long. I went back to my room in silence and began searching for a short-term rental. I prepared the necessities for a suitcase the following evening after work. My spouse, my son, and his wife called me after I moved into the temporary apartment. "Mum, please return now. I had intended to take you out to supper this evening. Please return later." "Hey, how are you doing? Come home right now and stop being so obstinate." They were all chanting "Come back" at the same time. As I responded, I reviewed everything that had transpired. Lisa is my name. In addition to my full-time job, I oversee the home. Thomas, my spouse, is employed as well, and he regularly brings up his subordinates at the breakfast table. These days, young subordinates aren't even interested in picking up the phone. It's absurd. Now, things are different. You can accomplish anything with social media. They don't have a professional sense of duty. His never-ending anecdotes about the past would start when I was younger. I would listen to him with resignation every time. To put it plainly, my husband does not hold contemporary beliefs. He says things like, "Women should serve men," and "Men should work outside while women concentrate on housework and childcare." He enjoys acting as the lord and master since he can't tolerate losing control at home. He objected to the concept of my becoming a working wife when our kids were married and moved away. However, I was able to persuade him to allow me to work. He began talking excitedly, but I responded to his remarks about the new house we were hoping to construct with a lackluster tone. He had decided we need to purchase a new home, even though he was in his 50s. He stated that living in a new home instead of our old, dilapidated one would be more pleasant for us when we retired. But isn't the house we live in now adequate? Rather of reconstructing it, we may just renovate it. No, a new house is required. Thomas was adamant about moving forward with the construction of a new house and would not change his mind. In the end, we hired a builder of homes. "Let's invite our son and his wife to a celebration when it's done. They will adore it." He became enthusiastic and started organising the party's cuisine. I was aware that he would delegate all of the planning and serving to me while he made his menu selection. Silently, I told myself. My spouse and I moved into the newly finished home shortly after it was built. The room was softly scented with the distinct perfume of fresh wood. "Aren't you happy we constructed it?" He boldly pushed up his chest. I couldn't help but feel a little pleased at that very moment, even if it felt a little too roomy for just the two of us in a 2-story house. To commemorate the new house, Thomas and I threw a housewarming party a month later and invited our son and his wife. Wide-eyed with awe, our son Andrew and his wife Emma entered the house. They couldn't stop expressing their amazement, even though they now reside in an apartment. "It's really roomy. What a stunning home. It's amazing." Inspired by what they said, My husband jokingly said, "You can live with us if you'd like. We have other rooms available." I laughed it off and said, "Come on, they can't possibly want to live with us." The celebration came to a happy conclusion. I had no idea that they would move in a few days after the party and take his remarks seriously. My son and his spouse showed up with bulky bags. "What's up with everything?" perplexed, I inquired. Andrew's head tipped. "We're relocating." "Your husband said it was okay," Emma said. They entered as though it were their house. They informed me that their contract had been cancelled, with effect from the end of the month, when I inquired about their residence. "This is too abrupt," I remarked, attempting to subtly disagree in the hopes that they would stand on their own. However, they ignored him and instead won Thomas over. "What's the difference if one or two more people live here?" said Thomas. "It's not about how many people there are. Furthermore, they are stuck there if their lease is cancelled." "That is inhumane." My spouse insisted on doing it, even though it was their duty. Almost without our permission, they moved in with us. A moving truck eventually pulled up in front of the house, and a few sturdy workers got to work unloading boxes. When they eventually departed with a heartfelt "thank you," my son and his wife's possessions were strewn all over the new home. But, rather of cleaning up, the two of them kicked back in the living room and fiddled around with their iPhones. "These belong to you." There was nowhere to walk, so I said, "Please put them away." Andrew answered, "You should do it, Mom. We're tired." The movers handled the majority of the moving, and they accomplished little. When my husband noticed this, he just looked at the stack of boxes without saying anything. I pushed Thomas to say something to them. "Don't be so rigid, Lisa," replied Thomas. "For them, you ought to do it. We are kin." Then he went back to his phone. I calmed myself by taking a long breath despite my question. Why me? They must have valuable and breakable goods among their possessions. Despite our familial relationship, I was uneasy managing their belongings. "Emma, please help me at least?" I inquired. With their faces turned toward me, all 6 of them started talking, accusing me of being a horrible mother-in-law, a bully, and an inhospitable person. I was treated as if I were the one who was unreasonable, which completely confused me. Still feeling worn out, I made my way downstairs to the living room the following morning. My son, his wife, and my husband were all up and enjoying their coffee. Andrew whispered to me, "Thanks for yesterday," while I was staring at them blankly. His statement sounded phony. I gave a sharp reply. "We'll treat you to dinner as a thank you," Andrew went on. It turns out that I wasn't mishearing him as I had assumed. "Today Emma and I are going grocery shopping," Andrew declared. Emma gave a distant nod. "Is that accurate?" I answered. "Well, I'll leave it to you today." "We just moved and don't have much money," Emma said. "Yeah, so we actually need to borrow your card," Andrew responded. I blinked, startled. Were they going to purchase on my card, then use my own money to take me to dinner? They requested so confidently for the credit card, but something seemed wrong about it. Do I give it to them or not? I took a quick look at my spouse, who was savouring his coffee with little enthusiasm. I was hesitant to give them the card, but I did it in the hopes of getting along well with them. Emma and Andrew were as content as kids who get pocket money. I cautioned, use it responsibly, but I was secretly a little delighted. I saw this meal as a chance to further my relationship with them. Anything from the kitchen is okay, including the dishes. I pointed out the positions of the spices to Emma, and she nodded subtly, yes. When I got home from work later that evening, I was expecting they would have supper ready. What a lovely thing it would have been. Instead, I discovered the home to be quiet and gloomy. My son and his wife were nowhere to be seen when I turned on the lights and had a quick look around. There were store-bought side dishes from the local grocery on the living room table, with a message tucked in the middle. It said just that. "We're heading out to eat." Thomas returned home and glanced around the living room table while I stood there dumbfounded. He was dissatisfied upon seeing the store-bought plates. "You're the housewife," yelled Thomas. "Don't be lazy. It's not me." Andrew and Emma promised to take care of dinner tonight. Despite their promise to prepare dinner, I was left with a feeling of unease even after the meal, I responded, exasperated. I was going to face my son and his wife about what had happened the night before, no matter what. I said, "Good morning," but it felt as though I had said nothing at all. Nobody answered. They had acknowledged me at least until yesterday. Sensing a problem, I yelled, "Andrew, Emma!" more loudly. Andrew burst in the door, looking shocked, and said, "Oh, apologies." "We slept in too late. We're about to go. Could you prepare our breakfast?" It surprised me. They had caused me so much bother that they had just vanished. I was confused and offended. With a troubled heart, feeling overtaken by the circumstances, I prepared breakfast. The idea of moving out of the house and into a temporary apartment was the only comfort I had. I prepared to get out as